Rekieta's already won.
Please, tell me again how you got that one right. We won't even get into how bad your analysis has been on the actual substance of the motion that we filed.
All these people are just proving how fraudulent they are. I mean, it's two different aspects. Some of these people are just deferential to the state no matter what. The second aspect is they either are completely incompetent in these basic areas of law, or they're lying and they're fraudsters and they're just for cash.
Our lawyers weren't doing anything. I got criticized for in court, and it's because I was at my lawyer off the mic to object.
And a bunch of the so-called practicing lawyers on lawsuits. By the way, if anybody practicing lawyer on lawsuits is giving the kind of advice these people are on the Rekieta case, note to never hire them.
Bad lawyers. F*** you. And when you're
he's making basically just ridiculous statements about probable cause in the Fourth Amendment. And this goes...
But you have to know what you're talking about. But hey, you know what? It'd be kind of weird. It'd be kind of strange. What if I told you that there's a lawyer out there who is representing a client in a felony possession case in Candy, Ohio County, in front of Judge Wenzel, and won that case on a Frank's challenge, running around in the truest definitions of a 90s
Rekieta's
I just keep letting me down, letting me down, letting me down.
Oh boy, everybody. It's Tyler Yonke, LPR. We've got a special guest. He's potentially criminal. It's Sean. Probably most of you are over here because of Sean. That was Sean's intro. I had to, it was a bit abrasive, people. I had to edit that thing up, censor some mouthpieces. But are you guys ready? Are you ready for this? Are you really ready for Sean to come on in? Let's add him to the show. Welcome, Sean. I don't know your last name, so anyway, welcome.
Thank you, Tyler. Yeah. Martin's last name, but yeah, no, you cleaned it up. That was I my hat's off to you for making that PG-13.
Yeah, I wanted to make some of those, where it looks like what they're saying is a cuss word. Obviously, that was
it was great.
And then I was like, anyway, so there we are. Hey, how are you doing? Great to finally meet you in
Good to meet you
virtual
too.
land.
Yeah, well, hey, it's the internet. It's like real life. It's almost like real life. No, I'm doing great. Had a busy day today. Had like a little bit of a scare on an issue, but like it's, it all works out. So, the Friday scaries are over and I'll wait for the Sunday scaries to happen again. I don't know. Do you ever get those?
I was just going to, my Friday, I try to do, so I have a lot of family that's dentists and in that field. So they don't work on Fridays. They don't work on Friday. I don't know what it is. Sounds like a wonderful thing. I've tried to fashion myself after that, and it's not working. And because partly is, for me, I do mostly family law. And clients come out of the woodwork on Friday. Suddenly they're going to contact me, and I'm like, I'm trying to get the F out of here. And they're all, thinking it's emergency. So that was my problem today. So elaborate, please.
Oh, I just had some issues with. I was waiting on a response from like an opposing counsel, and I was like, I didn't get it, and I'm like, we've got deadlines, and I was talking to another attorney I know, and he's like, what judge are you in front of? And I'm like, this judge. He's like, meh. Wait till Monday. Just file your thing. File it in Stanner. He's like, if you need me to walk it through, I got you. I got you on this one. And I'm like, oh, good. But yeah, no. Where I'm at, they do a lot of arraignments on Fridays. So I had like 2 arraignments today, and then there's one court I deal with. The judge does a bench trial, so I'll do them on Fridays, like Friday, like afternoons. So. Or sometimes that's Friday mornings, like those. Well, no, it's usually, they're quick. And like, he makes sure it's only going to be like an hour or two. But it's like, yeah, you're ending the week on like either a resounding success or a crushing defeat. But yeah, everybody.
Courts.
Well, no, I was going to say in family law, though, like people panic because they're like, well, Bobby's got something, and I don't want them to go to it. And I'm like, you could have told, like, how long have you known about this thing? Oh, it's been on this, it's been on the wrestling schedule for like 3 months. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I can't do anything now.
I tell people, and I mean, you always you see the movies or the TV shows where, they're lawyers on retainer and they're giving a call up and he's over there on the weekend. It's like, please, if unless it's going to entertain my wife, that it's such an egregious story, I'm not going to even don't call me. And by the way, they don't have my cell number. I just try to keep all that separate. So tell me a little bit about what you do exactly. Cause I do want to, for the fans out there, your chat, your fans in that you talk to you talk to it like it's another person, by the way. It's fascinating. How you doing, chat?
I never realized that.
I enjoy it. But we're going to talk about kind of your education training and stuff like that. Cause I think that's always interesting to people. And I don't know that you have maybe you've gotten into it, but this will be a nice little condensed spot for us in here.
Yeah,
but
sure.
Maybe we start from the top, which is what are you doing for practicing law? I think it's mostly criminal, but please tell us what you're doing.
Yeah.
Firm,
Yeah, I am the managing partner, equity partner, and majority shareholder of the Martin Law Office, a nice growing thriving organization over here in the eastern suburbs of Cleveland. Not the east side of Cleveland. Not the east side of Cleveland. Big difference. Big difference. As I have to explain to people, there's a big difference between those two things. But yeah, I do a general practice. I mean, I love the criminal stuff, but I mean, that doesn't pay the bills as much as like a divorce or being a guardian ad litem on a custody case or custody matters or whatever it is. So that's the sad part.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I did a little.
I know you like family law, it seems.
Well, I don't know that I like it, but the benefit of doing family law for me is it's constant work, right? And so someone always needs something. So you have plenty of money as far as, in my trust account and work. There's always, I look behind me on my desk today and I said, that's just money back there that I need to get to. So people are always willing to do it, which is good. It's good for that. But I've also said it's better to be good at one thing than bad at a whole bunch of things. So do you, there's just law you're not going into, or do you try to maintain some semblance of like?
I mean, I do like custody things and I do divorces, but if they're going to be hyper technical, I know when I'm going to be getting into something that's probably not a good idea for me, because I know there are attorneys out there who they will eat my lunch, and some of you are thinking, how would I let somebody eat my lunch? But metaphorically, not a real one.
Right.
But I do. But for the most part, though, with a lot of family issues, a lot of it's pretty straightforward, which helps a lot. But yeah, I understand what you're saying, because with the criminal stuff, it's always somebody new. Even with repeat people, they're going to screw up, but it's not a constant screwing up. So you have to, and guys, that's the thing when you're, people are getting divorced or they have a kid and they keep fighting over it. And it's never going to end till that kid turns 18.
So
I agree.
Maybe they don't know, but the jurisdiction of the court, at least in California, is 18 and out of high school. So, you have this, whether they're married or not, you got paternity issues, you got some divorces take forever. I had a case, a guy comes in here to me a few weeks ago. He's trying to retire. Okay. And he's a union member, and he goes to his union and talking about retirement benefits. And they go, oh, we're a jointer on your divorce and we never got a judgment. And he's like, you mean from 1989? Like, yeah. So he's starting to freak out because he's remarried. And so he comes to me and, they just didn't formalize the judgment. Now, I've had multiples of these where the court will do what's called a nunc pro tunc as of a date, and they don't like to have invalid marriages, so they will try to always fix this. But I'm going in there to get a judgment from 1989, which was the year I graduated high school. So, jurisdiction.
I should tell you how old I am then.
I'm sure you're younger than me. So
yes, I am by a lot based on that.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. We all have. So what did you go to undergrad for? Let's go. By the way, I know there's a lot out there in the chat, and I may not get to it because I'm interested in Sean's stuff. So I'm sorry, people, but there you go.
Yeah, and the other thing I forgot to mention is I take appellate cases, like criminal appeals. I take those as appointed most of the time because people can't afford to pay for the appeal. I do those because you retain so many cases, and you learn those little bits. You keep them away, and I think it makes you a better like for me, I feel like it does make me a better litigator. You learn how to, you get shellacked in an oral argument once in a while, but just doing those, I think, makes you a better researcher, a better writer, and you can use that for everything else you do.
Well,
but yes,
is it also because that's more law intensive, rather than discovery and everything else we're doing, getting up to the case. Now it goes to the appeals, and it's not just hey, I didn't like the ruling. It's like on what grounds? So
yes,
is that part of it? Okay.
I think it forces you to be a little more academic in your writing. It forces you to think a little more academically based. But yeah, no, I'm a product of public school education all the way through. I went to Bowling Green State University. That's in Bowling Green, Ohio. Bowling Green, Kentucky is home to Western Kentucky University.
That's right.
I was the best political science major. Took a lot of history classes as well. And then I went up the road to Toledo, Ohio, to the University of Toledo for law school. And that was an experience. So I tell people about it because I don't hide the fact, like, I almost bombed out of law school the first year. And it's because I did the night program. And I was the guy in undergrad, like, when it's time for the final, I'd show up 45 minutes before class, and I'm like, all right, let's go. And I'd be fine. I'd burn it down and I'd be good to go. Or when you in classes, like, we have to have a study group and there's kids sitting there with note cards. And I'm like, the fuck is wrong with you people? This is easy. I got to law school and I kind of forgot. Everybody there is at least as smart as you or smarter than you or close to you. And I started getting shellacked on tests. And after that first semester, after those first 2 semesters a night, they send a letter like, you better not fuck up. And I had to start, like, I was like at a 2, and if you're under a 2, you're gone. And I was like at a 2.1. And it took me 5 years to get out of there, and I had to battle it back, and I got it to like a 3.2. I mean, it was
excellent.
I didn't realize how fucking hard it was to raise your GPA. Like, maintaining it was okay, but oh my God, like, I had Dean's List multiple times, and I'm like, I'm awesome. And then I get done and I'm like, oh shit, my GPA is still like that low.
Did you go straight into law school then, or did you have any time in between?
No, I went straight into law school, but I was a night student the whole time. I was part-time, which really, it worked out well. I was able to work my job. I worked nights, I worked for FedEx, and it worked out great. It allowed my wife at the time and us, things worked out well. But the problem was it made school difficult because everybody I started with, they transferred into the day program and then they disappeared and they graduated.
Gotcha.
And then you keep running into people, and people start law school and finish. They started and finished. They started after you and they finished before you. And it gets a little disheartening. And after a while, you're just like, you don't like talking to anybody because you're like in those World War II movies where you're the grizzled sergeant. You're like, I don't want to learn your name because you're going to die.
Did you have a friend that, like, I did night school as well because I did it later in my life. As I indicated, I'm really old. So I did it later, and I was, kids and working. And there's a group of us, and then it narrowed down to just me and my buddy, and we studied together all the time. That was kind of our thing. Did you have that, or did you just kind of keep it solo?
For about 2 years, I had that. Actually, 2.5 years, I had that. Then the guy I was studying with graduated because he went to day. So yeah, after a while, I was kind of on my own. So it was like it was a solitary existence studying, but that was better for me anyway. I don't. If I'm in a group, I'll bullshit a lot. I feel like I also start freaking myself out because, you sit there and you're talking. It's like when you took the bar, you sit there and you're sitting like in the cafeteria and people start talking. You're like, oh, well, you just want to scream at everybody, shut up, because I don't want to hear what you did. Because I'm like, wait, am I smarter than you? Or am I stupider than you? Wait, no, there's no way. You are dumber than I am. I had to have gotten it right. Then you listen to them talk more and they articulate. And you're like, uh-oh. Like, yeah, so that's what happens when I'm in a group setting. I can't. It makes me very nervous.
By the way, you were preaching out. I remember even going through law school. So I went through engineering before, so I didn't think I was dumb necessarily, but yeah, you got to work hard. So I had a good mechanical.
Okay, so you're real engineering. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, well, so there was a few of us in, mechanical, civil, electrical, and the electricals were the big nerds. Civil we didn't really consider them engineers, and then they got all the jobs, so it was whatever.
Yeah.
But when people are like the grade ahead of you, or they're taking a class and someone says, "Oh, that's super hard," he's like, you know what? This is what I thought too. I was like, there's a lot of idiots that are attorneys, right? Kamala Harris, as an example.
Yes.
Just throwing one out there. So
Very
you're
true.
like, oh, they can pass I could do it. And who knows, maybe that's their subject or they're not good at that. So yeah. So good for you. I'm glad. So did you start working right away out of there?
Yes.
Or did you get it in with a firm? When did you decide to?
Oh
do
no,
your
no.
own thing?
I've been more or less on my own. I worked for a firm for about 9 months, and that was I started just working, kind of as a contract capacity with the local public defender's office just to make a little money and get going. But I mean, that first couple of months, I worked my night job still, like that didn't go away. And it was funny because when I was in law school, people were getting jammed up left and right on things. And they're like, "Oh, can you help me?" And I'm like, sorry. And then once I became an attorney and passed the bar, like nobody ever had problems except for like one guy. He got drunk and high and plowed into a car and killed like 2 old people. And I'm like, he's like, "What's going to happen to me?" I'm like, "You're going to prison, man." But I ended up doing that for a little while, and then I took a job down in Southern Ohio. This is probably like the end of 2014 through 2015, in the oil fields down there. Fracking was booming, and it was great because Ohio doesn't have natural resources law because we never had it. Like the oil booms, it's because they were drilling and they'd hit like a shale formation. And they're like, "Oh, we struck oil," and then it would die right away because they would. You can only, sponge up so much using the old school methods. So, Ohio would have all these little oil booms and then it would immediately crash. So there was never long enough issues of how do you do things with like wells that are working for 100 years. There is some coal, but the coal stuff has already been kind of sorted out. But when it came to oil and natural gas, there were no rules. It was, even now, really, I haven't followed it too much, but I know it's overall the Wild West. So it was funny because I was working for this firm. We represented drilling companies. We represented guys who were like a couple of hee-haws with, a drilling rig on the back of their truck, all the way up to XTO, which is Exxon's drilling arm that was getting ready to start doing stuff all over Southern Ohio. And then the Saudis flooded the oil market and killed it. And it got to the point where you could pay off all the people you had to pay off. You could pay the Wahhabists off in Saudi Arabia, pay the Somali pirates off, ship it all the way over. And it was cheaper to do that than to go down the Ohio River, frack it all out, pump it up to a refinery. It was still cheaper to send it by boat. And, all the companies that I was representing and dealing with, all of them went under except for one. The clients I had, one of them got delisted off the NYSE because they crashed and burned. And it really sucked because they paid a lot, but also as far as firm jobs go, I got to experience big law in like a very small firm setting. Like you had to bill like 2,500 hours a year, like that place, but they paid you out the nose. But there were times, and if you guys understand at big law firms, that's how that go, like billable hours.
Yep.
And there was one, like, it's like my second month there. And, the partner walks in. He's like, "If you can't make your fucking 250, just fucking leave right fucking now." And we were like 2 weeks into the month. And I was like, "Well, no, I'm good." But yeah, they those guys were pretty cool. But the business collapsed. So they had to consolidate. And since then, I've pretty much I was on my own then again until about 2018. I'd always thought I wanted to be a prosecutor. I had interned in prosecutors' offices in law school, and I kind of thought it was my thing. And I went and I took a job. I had also just got divorced. So I was like, I need to get out of town anyway. Went to go work in a small town like where I grew up, but holy shit, it's boring. It was the middle of nowhere. It wasn't in the middle of nowhere, but I mean, it was in God's country. It was like Jeff Jordan's district. So it was very red. It's a county of 40,000 people. My boss was great. The courts were great. It just wasn't a good fit for me. Like I had been in a city with 400,000 people and murders and all kinds of cool shit going on. That was more my speed, more my jam. So from there, I went to, and also I'm from the Cleveland area. I had been living in Toledo. I didn't want to stay in that area. I wanted to get back over to the Northeast Ohio. I took a job at the prosecutor's office up this way. Yeah, it was a lot of fun there. It was a bigger county, a lot more to do. 2020 was, started happening. We started having COVID. We started having to take furloughs. That's when I'm like, oh God, this is getting bad. And then our boss, so the guy who was the elected prosecutor took a job as a judge. She was the deputy who was running the office, acting. She was going to get creamed in the election, and the lady running the election was like, I'm going to cut the grass when I come in. So it was like, well, we better leave. And she cut the grass, with a lot of incompetent people when she replaced. So, yeah. But other than that, I will. What's that?
Well, that could be good that she cut the grass with a lot of
incompetent No. I'm sorry. She cut the grass and installed incompetent people.
Oh, well, of course. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for making my sense of public office more what it is. Okay. So you've been a prosecutor and now you defend a lot. So,
and I'm back to defending.
Okay. Which makes you unique for the Nick saga that we went through. And we're still going through. We can talk about that a little bit as well.
Sure.
I think you've got somewhat of a unique perspective because you've talked about being a guardian ad litem. This case was twofold, right? When it came into like the CPS side, it was at least a little bit more familiar for what I do. And I thought there was a lot there that I really knew about, so I could kind of take my my time on that. But you kind of were able to cross everything. So I always thought your analysis was good. But you're also doing criminal defense. Now, can you first answer, because there's a lot here, can you first answer the question, do you lick the boot of the state?
No, I do not. I don't lick the boot of the state, but I'm also just going to say, at the time, does the government lie? Yes. Do I just trust the government? Yes. When you come into my office and you say, hey, man, I just got indicted, I'm like, cool. That's a bunch of words on paper. That doesn't mean shit to me right now.
Yeah.
That said, though, when I get the evidence and I go, whew, well, this is footage of you walking in a convenience store with a 12 gauge pointing at people's faces. Okay, now we got to talk. Or this is, you know what? Yeah, that was 56 grams of fucking meth. Yep. And you're on video picking it up. Like, there's only so much you could do at that point. Do I think the government's lying all the time? No. But until I can verify it, I assume that something's probably not right. But in the situation where, unlike those types of cases, or like when you take on a family law case, well, I don't know the whole story. It's like, well, we knew the whole story before. Like all the questions I would have had, I watched it happen. I have the answers. So we could kind of cut out the middleman and cut out some of the what don't we know part. We could go straight into here's what's happening, I think is the way I look at it. And, it's a lot of times, most people get caught. They catch you red-handed. As Bruce Rivers says, people self-snitch. And, people tell on themselves all the time. Or as I use that Stringer Bell clip, people take notes on their criminal conspiracies. They document it. They memorialize it. They film themselves doing it. And, you make it easy for them. You'd think that the government created these to screw us over with, and because it feels like they did at times.
Right. I was just reading about a case, and now I'm just I didn't read enough into it other than some headlines and a little bit further, so I might get some things wrong, but it's about cell phones, being able to open them up, and is your thumbprint or your face actually, and I think the ruling, I think it went up to appeals court, and it's
been the Supreme Court points
okay,
too. Yeah,
that's legit. You can do that.
Yeah, they can force your thumb on there. They can they can hold up to your face. The only thing, passcodes are the only thing protected. And now with the way some of these phones are that are getting to the point where they can't crack them open, just do a passcode. I mean, the Face ID is easy. I know people have it and they just go up and it's on. I get it. That's super cool. It's super easy to have, but it becomes the issues of, because I talk about, I don't know if you've ever, I kind of go off on tangents every once in a while, like InfoSec and comm security. Like, yes, encryption's great. The problem is the reason why encryption fails is because after a while, people are like, fuck, I want to quit. It's a pain in the ass.
It's
So you
too
quit
much,
using
yeah.
it. And then after a while, you've got an exploit. So that's how it goes. I mean, it's how they tore apart the Enigma codes, because the one guy kept using the same cipher settings all the time, and they were able to start figuring stuff out. Like, his name was Walter because he used like WAL, and then when he was transmitting back, he would use like KLA, and they figured out his probably girlfriend was named Claire, and they were, it's laziness, breeds that, and yeah, that's why you've got to stick with the passcode, I would argue.
Yeah. So answer this.
And I'm
question,
sorry, I'm
just
talking a lot. My bad.
No, that's why you're here, Sean.
Yeah.
And I know you do that on your show too. Just because you did it does not mean you're guilty. And
That's
why
correct.
criminal defense are here. And I understand this. This is how, a lot of these cases that are seminal cases, Miranda, I think, is example, or Rahimi. I don't know if you remember heard that.
Yes.
Total scumbags, but sometimes they set precedent because of the overreach of the government, right? So you've got to, and it's good. It's some good back and forth. Now, I'm quite the extremist as far as libertarian goes, but that's my personal life. And yes, there are laws I wish weren't there, but this was what I found odd with the Nick part, which is I'm going to tell you what I think is going to happen based on what is actually reality in this case. And I don't think Robert Barnes was able to differentiate himself from that kind of perspective and do that himself, other than I think he grifts a lot, honestly. But so what's your give and take with some of this, which is I think maybe there's a reflexive thing with both of us pushing back against the government, which it should be, but then also like reporting on a case like Nick without sounding like you're taking on everything like Barnes accuses you of, or me.
I mean, it's just how in like any other case, it's just like I said, this is when we just have so much more information. We've been there. We've been watching the train wreck happen. We've been watching the pot boil and boil and boil and boil, and now it blew over. We've had that. It's a different situation. This is one of those times where I'm now I'm part of the lore of this stuff,
Yes,
and it's different. It's different than like if we're talking about like Styx Hexenhammer and what's going on with him right now, or P. Diddy, but it's like if you knew P. Diddy and you had been to a freak off, or you had seen a freak off, you would have that insight and say like, no, guys, no, it's done. It's a little different there. And I think for, people like Robert Barnes, a lot of it is, he's been bombastic and he's been like this. So you have to keep that line going. You have to keep doing that. That's what your people want. I think, to an extent for him, it's performative, because certainly he doesn't go in every court case like that. If he does, he's insane. No, at some point he's going to say, yeah, man, they do got you. Like, that's it. But I think in that situation, it's easier to say like, oh, the government's going down. And it never happens like that. It's never a movie. It's never a, Franklin and Bash episode or an episode of Suits. I mean, if the law was 1% of that, oh my God, it would suck so less. I would love this job so much more.
Right.
I think you would too.
Yeah.
In that regard,
No,
if you could just walk up and hand somebody, here's a folder, we win. It's like,
I mean,
because you know what happens?
If you know who.
I was going to say to chat out there, if you were trying to do that in real life, you know what the guy says? I'm like, here, we've got all this stuff. Fuck your shit. It's probably fake anyway. We'll see you in court. Like, that's what happens.
By the way, you're so right. I've only had a few Perry Mason moments. I had this one. It was when COVID was happening, so we were doing trials via Zoom, and I've got my guy in we're getting ready to. It's about a business evaluation, and I got his valuation the night before, or I was going through it with a CPA, and it looked like there was some double charging. Something was wrong, So whatever. Let's just say it was $50,000. It was community property and I'm like, oh, it's only maybe 20. So I'm able to present this to their expert, and over lunch she comes back and she's like, you're right. So, boom, it was kind of like, hey, it was great, but it just doesn't happen that way. I mean, I'm sorry to break it to you folks.
Even when you have that, just moment, and you crank one off into the stands. God, I shouldn't have said it like that. Kind of like the Indians did last night. Yeah, it's awesome, but it doesn't happen like that. Usually you're like, I'm just going to fucking lay into this guy in trial. And you get it, and a lot of times you're just like, oh, yeah, actually, yeah, you got me. And you're like, it didn't score the way you wanted it to score. Yeah. That it was, just, yeah, you're wanting one of those videos where it's like a JDAM hitting an Afghan house and it's just, and instead it's just poof.
Although we did kind of have that with Rittenhouse. I mean, that was
the
legal mindset's big thing. Look, someone has a question or comment here. When Barnes first saw that Nick had been arrested, he assumed that Nick was going to jail, only to change his tune when he discovered he could grift off it. I will say this, which is, here's my thing. I grew up, parents very Republican. I'm that way. Now I'm libertarian, but I'm lean that direction. I'm just kind of disgusted with. And what happened when I decided this is the way I was going to be? I felt like I could critique my own side much better. And I don't think Barnes understands that. All he does is he and Viva, no matter where that goes, they are going down that route as well. They can't get themselves away from it. So their analysis of court cases, it's all swept up in politics. I firmly believe that's how they see it, like a fever dream. Whereas sometimes you just have to say, here's the reality of the case, and maybe it's against my people, maybe it's not. And at least that's my perspective. What do you think?
Oh yeah, no, I agree. And like I said this before, I think a great example of this is I thought for a while all the strongest of these cases against like Trump was the Georgia case because he signed a document. And that's where I thought ultimately they were going to be able to hammer him on. But now we've gone through watching the Young Thug trial, watching Fannie Willis and her little band of like morons. And I'm like, okay, well, actually, he's probably going to be okay down there. Like, I thought that was going to be one of the ones they were probably going to get him dead to rights just because of so many, like the way that one played out. But now but yes, I think you have to be willing to say, yes, this is not going to turn out the way you want. Just like with the Vanderstock case that came out with the 3D, the ATF trying to regulate and change the definition of what's a receiver. I don't think the government's, the Supreme, like here, like I've tried to explain to people, and there's the problem is in the Second Amendment side of things. You've probably seen some of these channels, the end of the NFA. Oh my God, we're going to have machine guns. And, then there's the one guy who has the annoying thumbnails of like the Supreme Court on fire and Biden getting mad. You know who I'm probably talking about. Guys, no, like the only way I'm going to have a crate full of Uzis in my garage right now is if there were 9 Clarence Thomases. And even then, I bet 2 or 3 of them would probably say no. The idea that I'm just going to have rockets and grenades and I can have crew-served weapons and a javelin and, anything else I can get my hands on, 120 millimeter mortars. You're not getting Gorsuch to do that. You're not getting Kavanaugh to do that. You sure as hell are not getting Roberts. You sure as hell are not getting Amy Coney Barrett. Even Machine Gun Sammy Alito ain't doing that. So you just have to be on it. That was his nickname because he had like a controversial Fifth Circuit ruling where it's like, well, it's actually not too bad probably. And this was like years and years ago. So they called him Machine Gun Sammy because it was like, oh my God, he like didn't completely laugh the NFA case out of court. But that's where I think you have to be honest with things.
Yeah, completely. And then, look, this is where I think he gets away with it, and kind of, and I think a lot of this is coming back on him. Much like when the Frank's motion went against him, I said this, by the way, I thought it was the most ridiculous concept he had, which is the Frank's motion, the government's case is so weak, they asked to do a reply brief. That's what he kept saying. And I'm like, whoa. Why would you not do a reply brief? That's the dumbest thing. It's the dumbest concept he ever could come up with. I mean, just and
he's like, well, if you were good to go on it, you'd tackle it right there. I'm like, they gave it to the prosecutor the day before the hearing. Right. There, guys, there is unless and even like when I was in the one prosecutor's office, we had to deal with a sovereign citizen. The police tried to pull him over, and he went on like an OJ style chase, where he ended up trying to run the cops off the road once or twice.
He didn't drive through a parade, did he?
No. He didn't do that.
That was my Daryl Brooks story.
Yes. It was not Daryl Brooks. This guy,
Okay.
his motions would be completely fucking insane. But we would sit there and take our time and respond to them. We would just go, judge, run this tool, dismiss the motion. Like, we would actually do the work. And yes, we would be really snarky about it because he would say, my name's, I'm not going to use his real name, but like, my name's Bob Boberson, a people of the state of Ohio. And we would have a footnote saying, the defendant refers himself as a people of the state of Ohio. We're not sure if he refers to himself in the plurality or the singular. Regardless, we don't concede any rights that may infer upon him, which would be detrimental to the case. Like, we would just, you point out, like, we're not, fine, we'll play this game a little bit, but you respond properly. You don't mess around. Or when I was in that office too, I would get the motions like guys who were in prison trying to get out, trying to set aside their verdict, and I go through and do the work and putting it all out there. You don't just go, judge, this guy's in prison, fuck him. No, you do the work, you put it together properly, you take your time and investigate it. Just like if you get a bullshit civil complaint from your client, again, from somebody else, you don't just sit there and go LOL and leave it alone. You draft a proper document. You put an argument together. Winging it is, if you don't have to wing it, you never wing it. If you have to wing it, fine. You put your boots on and you strap up. But yes, the idea, they should have just addressed, it's like, that's not her only job. She's handling other cases. She probably hadn't time to fully read it. Like, what is she supposed to defend against? And, at that point, yes, that's how Nick probably would have won, is if she tried to defend it. It would have looked really bad. But, like,
Yeah,
the detective's not there. Like, where do you go? Like, we need him. We're going to have to talk about stuff.
Yeah. And by the way, just the Daryl Brooks thing that I made a joke about, but it's similar here, which, when you watch that trial, he was very annoying. But what the judge, I think, was making sure of, that it was an open and shut case. And so you don't have any reason for an appellate, the appeals court to overturn anything, right? She's doing everything she can by putting him in the other room, making sure everything's, T's are crossed, I's are dotted. Much like this, you have to present your side to make sure that if you do have an appeal, you've at least presented yourself as you should, right? In defending your client or the state in this case.
Yeah.
So, it is a ridiculous comment.
And even the prosecutors in the Daryl Brooks case, when Daryl Brooks is starting to like screw up, they're like, Judge, we don't want him to go down that road because now it opens up the issues of his like raping this lady when she was like 15, and we don't want him to go down that road because that like we don't want to induce failure into this. So yeah, you take your time, you do it right, and they took their time and they took a deep breath, they read it, and they I don't know. I had to read that motion a couple of times to figure out what the hell they were getting at. And I don't know if you
Nick's?
The Frank's motion, because it was so, and people think I'm joking. No, when you have a thing and there's not alignment, that's not really a big deal for me. Like I could survive. I twitch a little bit when it happens. But if it's not really properly there's not headings, it's not broken down in a way that if you have to have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, fine. Don't just go point A and just blah and just barf out, 3 or 4 issues. Like, break it down. It doesn't look bad. It's actually helpful that way. I can kind of figure out, okay, yes, these are arguments you're making. These are arguments you're not making. When it's just a gobbledygook, I think you're an idiot.
Well, I was just going to say, you're submitting. Let me just say it, and then I'll let you go. Sorry. When you submit it to the judge, if the judge has an issue with some of these things too, you don't know. So you want to make sure your style, all of this is on point and per the court's local rules or what have you, so that when the judge sees, that's not a turnoff, right? Everything you want to do. I mean, anyway, go ahead.
No, I've said it before, and I think you would agree. Even in a family court setting where you're just in front of a judge or a magistrate, not even in front of a jury, it's all about sales. How does your client look? What are you selling? Do you guys look competent? Is your writing competent? If you got sales literature and it's all hammered dog turds, well, you're not going to care about that. You're going to screw that product. It's probably garbage. Yes, judges appreciate it when they look at your writing and they know it's well done, and they know that when you're going to turn in a product. It's, it's going to be polished. It's going to be good. It may not be correct at the end of the day, but at least they can read it, digest it, and understand it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it kind of goes in with that too, what you're presenting there. I think, and this is where Barnes, I think, and I'm sorry, I'm bashing on him, but he's been fun to do.
No, it's okay.
Where where he doesn't have to play the game, right? At least online, which is accountability, right? Nothing is bigger to me than telling my client the outcomes that I think are going to happen. It's setting expectations, so much so that it protects you in case something goes awry. You express to them what you think is going to happen, and and it's good for you as well. I always tell them, here's what's going to happen if we go to court, and now let's narrow our focus into that. So that's an important aspect that he doesn't have to deal with. So exactly what you're talking about here. How do you go about that in your practice, and does it differ with what you present online as well, or do you just kind of, without even maybe thinking about it, that's just what you're doing all the time?
Well, my lovely future missus has told me I kind of do it the same way, and other people that I know in real life have
You're
told me.
You're setting expectations with her. Is that what you're saying?
Don't worry, I exceed expectations.
Where's my?
But no, it's the idea that that's normally what happens. There's applause. No, but I think it's helpful to explain to people, here's where you are, here's what's going to happen. The one thing I've had a pretty good ability to do is explain things in a way people can understand it. So the way I try to, when I'm explaining things here, when I'm online, I use those examples for people. And I will say, thankfully, where I grew up, where I was brought up, the people I knew, I'm able to I can relate to a lot of people. And I'm not saying you do the code switching thing, but when you're trying to explain something to somebody and they like to hunt, I go hunting. Okay, well, you're explaining in a way they understand it.
Yeah.
Or if they're a mechanic, or if they're this or that or the other, or, they might not be well educated. They might not be very intelligent. You have to explain things to people a certain way. And I will say, I think my time working in a public defender's office, really dealing with people who are disadvantaged, who are kind of down on their luck. And you have to explain to somebody, here's the reality of the situation, and taking your sheet of paper like this and writing out here's the spectrum of thank you. Here's the spectrum of issues we're looking at. Here's your outcomes that you could be facing. That was a lovely message just now. Here's where it is. Here's what we can do. Here's what we can't do. My goal, I explain to people, it's like a tractor pull. I'm trying to get you across that 300-foot line. If we can, that's great, because that means, hey, we win. You go home like it never even happened. I can never promise you that. Sometimes it's all about how far down the track I can get. Sometimes I might only get 10 feet. And now we're arguing about how long you're going to prison for. Is it, 5, 10, 15 years? Or is it going to be mandatory, not mandatory? That might be the victory. And it's like a death penalty case. The victory in a death penalty case is life without parole. Or maybe I can get you to 270 feet. And now we're arguing about what kind of probation are you going to be doing? How long is it going to be for? Are you getting a misdemeanor? Is it a crime of violence? That way, if it's not, we can get it sealed and expunged later down the road. All the different things, arguing about restitution. Are you willing to testify against the other people? It's an entire realm of possibilities, but that's where you explain to people, and I tell people to start, usually when they say, well, can you get this dismissed? And I tell them everything is possible, but don't count on that. And I won't talk about it again. Because once you say the word dismiss, all people hear is the word dismiss, 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 dismiss.
Yep.
And you just really have to explain it. You have to be honest with them, because after a while, they're already working with you. They've already retained you. It's look, I'm not going to lie to you. I will be 100% truthful with you. If I think you've got it, I'll tell you. But I'll also tell people, if you want to go to trial, and the facts aren't in your case, like I've told people in the history of bad ideas, this is a really bad idea. I would not recommend doing it. I would recommend settling. I would recommend taking a plea. But I also tell people at the end of the day, I'm gambling with house money. So if you want to let it ride, fine. I go home. I go home at the end of the day. You're going to be staying here, or it's not my kids. It's not my custody. If you want to let it ride, that's fine with me. I'll fight, and I will fight as hard as I fucking can. But when it doesn't turn out right, and she's got your kid 75% of the time, like, I go home and eat a sandwich. You're going to be sitting there staring at a table with an empty chair. It's all about what you want to do and what you're willing to risk. And I think that, just being blunt about it and just being, I can make it funny and laughy here when we're online, but it's really, and I didn't really notice it at the time, but yeah, I'm glad I can kind of just do that. And I feel like people, they tell me they appreciate that I'm talking to them like I'm sitting across the table from them. And I know that's not easy to do, but I guess I kind of lucked out in that regard.
Yeah. So someone's Jim Cox is quoting Hillary Clinton here. I
don't feel no ways tired.
Yes. You mentioned the tractor pull analogy. I have one that I use with my clients. It's usually when they're testifying. I'm like, you're a piano, okay? So if they ask for a key, I only want to hear one note. I don't want to hear a song, right?
Yes.
Do you have any other good? Okay, there you go. Yeah. Do you have any other ones that you want to share with the people analogies that you use? Good old folks.
I mean, and I can use that because in Ohio, there's a lot of rural areas, and so people like tractor pulls and all that. But I try to explain to people, you are, when I explain to them about being in court, they are judging you. They've already presumed very likely that you are a piece of shit, and you're gonna have to sit there and you're gonna have to convince them that. If you can at least convince them saying, well, maybe you're not a piece of shit, that's all I need from you. That means you sit there, and I hate to say I ripped the lines out of A Few Good Men, but no, you need to sit there. Everything you hear, you expected it to happen. If something happens and you don't react, you are a fucking statue. You are going to sit there, if you want to, like, I've had clients before, like, here's a notepad, start writing on it. I don't care what it is you write.
Yeah.
You can take notes. I don't care if you want to write your autobiography. If you want to start writing out some schizophrenic shit, cool. You want to sit there and start sketching stuff out. Like I had one time a guy do it, but he would sketch, and I'd say sketch around different areas to make it look like you're writing, taking notes. And he's like, I got you. So he drew like the courtroom. But he did a pretty good job with his pen, and I'd look over like, and he'd slide it over, and I'd nod, and I let him keep going. And yeah, it's all about, pretty much. If you can at least not look like a complete piece of shit, like that's half the battle. Where you're sitting there and you're just shaking your head, or you got a bit of a glare, you got resting bitch face, any slip up, you're done, you're dead. And it explains to people, this is bomb diffusing. There's either we succeed or we don't. I remember I forget where I saw this shirt, but it was a guy who did like EOD work, and it said initial success or total failure. Pretty much, either we're going to completely succeed or completely fail. But I do think explain to people that it's sales at the end of the day is something I think a lot of people don't realize. Like, I'm selling something. I'm selling a narrative. I'm selling a story. I'm selling an image. This guy's not a bad guy. Or at least they can't prove he's a bad guy. And that's a hard sell. It's a very hard sell. But that's, I think...
go ahead.
No. Go for it.
Well, I was just going to say, it's with all cases that you have to go to trial from like me in family court. I tell them, especially, I think it's probably similar to criminal even, which is your emotions can't get the better of you, because if you can't control yourself in court, of course, you've got problems outside of court when you're not in front of a judge. Yeah. So, I'm like telling them, don't roll your eyes, and for me, they're like, hey, can I testify, because these short cause hearings, when you don't, people don't understand. So you file a motion, you go in there, we have short cause hearings. It's 20 minutes and it's anything goes. Hearsay, it's all good until we, set it for trial. Now we have something different. So I'm testifying basically on behalf of the clients, and they're like, can I? And I'm like, there's some I don't want to at all. Some don't want to. And I understand because the emotion. So they have to treat it like a business sense here. So I don't know
Yeah.
if there's anything question there, but
And even in a juvenile court or family court setting, it's even worse because you're dealing with a magistrate or a judge who are generally finely tuned bullshit detectors. So they're really on it. So when you're in front of the I won't say too much more about it. I can't say too much more about it. But yesterday I was in a hearing where I was a guardian ad litem between a mom and a dad. And I've talked to them both separately. I've talked to the kid and all this happened. Well, we did an in-camera interview with the kid. Okay. And then the magistrate wanted to be like, look, I need to bring mom and dad in here because she's like, I need to get some shit straight. Like, we need my interim orders, mom and dad are going to hear these because she's like, I'm not fucking around anymore. And mom and dad both were like, can I say something? And she's like, okay, yeah, what is it you're going to say? I'm thinking, okay, well, that was so revealing when they both started talking, and I'm like, I'm just sitting like, and their attorneys were kind of like, their attorneys are on their client's side and all that, but I'm sitting there as a third party, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, oh, like you guys are telling me this is a different side of you than when we met, and the magistrate, I was packing up, and the attorneys and everybody already left out. I was like, well, that was interesting, and she's like, yeah, sometimes it helps when I can kind of see them how they interact with each other, because I was like, yeah, it was a very revealing situation. And sometimes it's no, shut up. If you show emotions, any emotion, you seem like you're super aggressive. Okay, well, you're fucked. If you come off as very lackadaisical, I'm like, you don't care. You're still screwed. It's you got to be a statue. I mean, you have to be stoic. And if you try to tell people read some Marcus Aurelius, they're going to be like, what? But you have to be, you've got to be an ice cube. And it's hard to do that because we're not good at that as people. And I get that.
No. And if I don't know if you've ever had to go to court on something, like I had a traffic ticket. And so my law partner at the time, he was doing traffic stuff. So I'll defend you. And you go, and the cop is just lying on the stand. And I'm like getting worked up. And it made me realize that's where the attorney comes in useful, because I wouldn't be able to cross-examine him very well. And my law partner did fine. We still was guilty. But let me ask you some questions here.
Sure.
Nick Rekieta. So we'll do a little bit more bashing on him, because it reminded me when you played the clip, and I don't know if you caught this, but he was, about the Frank's motion himself. He's like, you guys are idiots if you think I am writing this. Okay. I'm not writing it. Yet later in that same video, and you had it in your clip there, he's like, there's a non-practicing attorney who did this motion. So he's bragging about him. He had formally done one in this county. So do you suspect that he gave all the writing and the motion that he had done to that attorney, and they just kind of used what he had done? Because the first one seemed to be a pile of shit.
Yes. Well, and I think you'd probably agree. Those were written by two different people. Yeah. And you don't have to be a forensic analyst to understand the prose, the vocabulary, the mannerisms and style of writing. And I know a lot of you out there probably don't do a lot of writing, and I'm not like a prolific writer, but judges could tell who's writing. Like if they're from, like I said, when I worked in the office with the county of 40,000 people, it was the elected and 4 other prosecutors. And one of them did civil litigation and helping the townships and like all the stuff that like nobody really wanted to do. She was really good at it. So it was his number 2 who did a lot of stuff at the grand jury, and then my colleague and me. And when it came to the 3 of us on the criminal side of things, like if we were writing motions, or like he could tell which one of us was doing it based on what was written. The judge could tell. And it's not so it doesn't take much. You believe it or not, guys, you write the way you talk, and the way you talk is based on the way you think, and it's very identifiable. You might not use ain'ts, and you might drop F-bombs when you're speaking. You're not going to do it in your writing, but it will be very apparent very quickly. Your writing comes across as though you're speaking it. And I never realized that until judges comment. I'm like, oh, I think you did a good job on that motion. I'm like, how do you know I wrote it? And he's like, yeah, I could tell. Yeah. Yes, they were 2 different people. And yes, I think Nick gave white, all this. Here you go, bro. Here's one I did. Now, do I think Nick said like this is all ready to go? Sign it. I don't think so, because if he did that, that is like the most dangerous and scariest thing you can ever do as an attorney. You know, I knew this from the word go when I was, you know, brand new, like in the public defender's office, and people like, oh, I did all this research. Here you go. And I'm holding on to these papers. And I said, I walked downstairs and I was like, hey, boss, these people gave me all this stuff. I'm not going to look at it because I know it's probably garbage. But do I just throw it in the trash? And he's like, no. He's like, put some binder clips on it and then put some rubber bands around it and just stick it in a file in the back. And he's like, there, we looked at it. And they won't know any better. Because, yeah, if your clients are giving you anything other than like evidence, you're not touching it. You shouldn't be touching. You shouldn't be relying on, oh, I drafted this motion. It's like, no, nope. I've had that happen before too. Like, oh, I already did some work on this. Here you go. And I'm like, thanks. And I, you know, have a little folder and put it in the back. I'm like, we'll see that. And
absolutely.
Yeah. But, you know, I think that Nick, that was all Nick the first time through. And when Nick was doing that live, he was talking about that case. I was actually on live stream sniping, and I'm like, I was sitting there and I'm like, I'm sitting there, and the problem is, I very much truly believe I'm not the smartest guy in the room. So when he's sitting there running his mouth, I'm like, what did I miss? Is there something I missed here? And I'm going back through things. I'm reading the motions, and I'm like, chat, if I miss something, and you know, if they're looking at it from a different angle, tell me where I'm wrong. And then eventually I said, well, Nick said he had a case. I'm like, can we find it? And we found it. And Nick made all these arguments, and the court just literally blew them all up. Now, Nick did challenge the probable cause of whether or not there was enough information to sustain a charge, and that's where he won. But his Frank stuff and his suppression just crashed and burned. Now, okay, and I think in the case that he cited was actually, there was a lot there. And if I was a judge, I might have actually suppressed, because a lot of that was really hinky.
So that's a good question. So I didn't look into this, which is, he said someone who won a Frank's motion in this county. Did he win a Frank's motion?
Not the case that I think he's trying to refer to. No. He lost suppression. He lost on Frank's. He won that the felony charge was not supported by probable cause. So that still counts as a win, though. A win is a win. I don't care how you get it. He got a dub. But this idea that it was a Frank's motion, though, nope.
Smile and Be Happy says, is the local government in Minnesota being harsh towards Nick, or is there charges the normal, or is there, anyway, is this a normal response? I guess that's what they're saying. Maybe you could decipher that.
I guess I'd say, because I worked in a county about the same size as Candiota County. No, but the problem is you documented yourself. Like the townspeople can all see you doing coke, and they can see, you know, they're going to hear the stories about the kids being treated like shit. You got to do something like that. The county is not going to abide by that. And that's why you don't call down the thunder, and whether intentionally or unintentionally, you know, that's the issue here. You know, you're forcing the government's hand when you act like this. You know, that's
Absolutely.
The way it is.
Okay. So he came into my chat, which, you know, I'm a much smaller stream than you are. And I think I had shown you this. So this is what he had said, because I was talking about the CPS letter, right?
Yeah.
And for me, my investigation from this is CPS letter gets issued, and then that is the same day that Pomplin starts his investigation. So those are different, and one's a CPS worker. I mean, okay.
Yes.
But this is interesting. He says, no, you're missing it because you haven't seen the letter. Of course, why you haven't. The letter says the CPS report would not amount to criminal activity. Even if true, Pomplin asked to investigate legal activity. Do you think Nick told the CPS worker he was doing coke? Because that's what Pomplin was investigating. And Nick seems to think what he was investigating was legal activity. I mean, this is so convoluted. When I read it at the time, I couldn't even come up with a good response, because I'm like, am I missing? You know, once again, I'm not the smartest one in the room either. So sometimes I'm like, I got to digest this. What do you think? What do you think of that?
Well, I think for Nick, I think there's a little bit here, and I'm going to say it. I think his brain's a little fried. I think he's trying to think a million miles an hour all at once, because You just got indicted. The world knows. Like literally the training wheels fall off his world right then, and it's still kind of a mess. I think Nick is trying to make the argument that, and the other thing is they were investigating legal activity. Yeah, you have a power bill at your house that's a little higher than normal. That's legal activity. The police will investigate that if they have information about it. Like there's all kinds of. I bought a bunch of Sudafed. Guess what? The police are going to investigate legal activity. They're allowed to look into legal things as like they're not going to be able to get a warrant for legal activity, but they're allowed to look into it. And they're saying like, what is this? What's going on? If I'm sitting there, I have a machine gun and I'm ripping off rounds in the backyard. They might come and investigate because they heard automatic weapons fire. Then they realize, oh, okay, well, I guess we have no reason to be here. They're gone. But police investigate legal activity is a natural thing. Now, I don't know if I like that the way, the war on drugs and the police have become overbearing and all that. But, that's just like I said, it's like having machine guns. Like the world I like is not the world we have. But no, I think the thing is here, we never saw like that letter. That letter we actually have never seen.
No.
So, and the thing is, the Children's Services would never make a determination on what's criminal or not. Is it actionable under their abuse, neglect, and dependency statute? And the other thing is, they said it was insufficient information. And that's a big deal. They're saying we don't have enough information to go off of to even determine whether or not we should investigate. So it's not even it's like the grand jury saying we don't have enough information to indict. That's not saying you did or didn't do it. It's just saying we don't know. And that doesn't really mean anything because the one thing, if you notice in the Frank's filings next to it, they never say it was unsubstantiated. They never said the treatment of the children was unsubstantiated. And even if it was unsubstantiated, that was just a starting point for them to say something's going on at the Ricada family house. Well, let's say Pomplin, let's say that never happened. Wipe that part of the story out. When you read the probable cause affidavit, that's like literally removing one sentence out of the entire thing. And even if we want to remove a little bit more, cool. Pretend that never happens. Somebody says, hey, Pomplin, yeah, Nick Ricada is doing cocaine on stream. And he watches that. That's enough for a fucking warrant right there. So the kid's having a thing going on. Great. That's flavor. That's background. But even if it wasn't there and everything was fine, Nick riding the white stallion on stream, that's enough for a search warrant every day of the week. Yeah.
What is your prediction?
That's kind of how I look at it. Like, I think, but he's also in the situation of a very, very desperate client or person. Like there's, here's how Hillary can still win, or it's like a Q person, the Patriots, they're still in control. It's like, you got to trust QAnon. Sessions. Yeah. Right. Yeah. There's it's hopium.
Right. I don't want to talk baseball, but
yeah.
What are your chances here for your, I'm sure you're a Guardians fan. Is that correct?
I'm well, do you care? It's a blocked. Oh, my name tag blocks it, but yes, I'm an Indians fan.
Okay.
I'd love to see them win, but I kind of feel like it's never going to happen. And the best chance they ever had was 1994, but the strike ruined that. Because we went up against the Cubs and we couldn't beat the Cubs in 2016. So I'd love to see them win, but I don't think they're going to pull it off against the Yankees.
So
it's going to suck because the Cavs, the sport I hate the most, basketball, is like the only championship Cleveland's ever going to get. And the Browns are leaving town now again. Yeah.
It's rough. So I'm a Yankees fan, by the way. So
you are?
Know how, you're probably going to hit me, but I look fondly on the Cleveland Indians. There's a lot of good battles, the Jim Thome era. A lot of good stuff has come out of that place. And I'm always I believe in segregation the good old fashioned way, which is AL and NL. I'm always an AL fan. So whoever comes out of this side, I'm pulling for him. Hate the Dodgers with a passion and the Mets.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, you can hate me all you want, Sean, for the
Mm-hmm.
the New York spots, but it's what it is. So it was,
Yeah, no,
by
I
the way,
actually don't
last
mind.
night's game, was that a great? Or was it last night or 2 nights ago? That was
Yes,
an
last
amazing
night.
game.
It
That was
was.
a great
Yeah.
game. Even though the Yankees
And
lost, the way Judge came, they tied up and come back against Class A,
Mm-hmm.
and then you guys the walk off. That's fantastic. I mean,
oh,
baseball,
it
love
was. Yeah, and the thing is, I actually don't. The Yankees are okay. It's like Red Sox fans and the White Sox. I absolutely fucking hate.
See, we can hug
I
this
hate the White
out. I
Sox.
like that.
And it's funny because I hated the White Sox before I even had ever watched like Major League, and they're the big bad enemy in the show. So the movie.
Let me ask you some of this. So
Yeah.
SCOTUS, some you're watching all these cases. Is there anything that's and maybe we could talk about Bruin a little bit, but are there any cases or big laws that you think are going to get overturned? Like as an example, I think Dobbs was quite if Clarence Thomas kind of had some of his ways, the substantive due process, maybe unenumerated rights might be getting stripped away a little bit, which for me would be great. But what do you think? Are there anything coming down the pike? And was Bruin a good decision to help gun owners?
I think Bruin was phenomenal to help gun owners because I mean that cracked it open. I'd argue that's Heller was very important, but this is kind of like a Brown versus Board of Education level decision. Yeah. And now though we're starting to see some issues though where people are starting to make arguments of originalism in the First Amendment, which I'm like, I don't know about that because technically blasphemy was illegal, in 1791.
Yeah.
A lot of things you could say could get you cracked in the face with a nightstick in 1791. So, and how would you square that circle with things like, would that mean technically Schenck is valid law again? And, or Whitney versus California is valid law again? Like there'd be a lot of those where you're like, I don't know if I really want that. So, but then there's also some arguments about how would originalism work with the Fourth Amendment. Would the in 1791, would they have considered a Terry stop a search? And I don't know. Yeah. I think a lot of people might have said, yes, unhand me. But I think a lot of people would have said like, whatever, the police can't do anything wrong. So no, I think Bruin's good in that regard, but I think Bruin, people are going to have to realize, and the biggest thing I'll say about Bruin, I've tried to explain to people on the left, if you hadn't fucked with it so much, we wouldn't have had to do this. Like, that's the issue.
Same thing with Dobbs, in a sense. I mean, that case came about from, the pro-abortion side, in a sense, pushing.
Yes.
And then look what happened.
Yeah. Well, no, that's what I mean. You guys got fucking greedy, and now look what you're at. When you push and push and push, eventually there's either blowback or you accidentally push through and you fall through the other side. And yeah, I think Dobbs is a very good example of that. That said, I don't know if Dobbs is long for this world. I think if that's one the court would say we're going to immediately reverse. Bruin, I don't think they're going to be in a position to reverse because there's so many cases now that below it that have spawned from it. I think it's too late now. So I think Bruin's safe, but I don't think Dobbs is safe.
Okay. So I don't know if you watched my show enough to know my disdain for incorporation. So I know a lot of people, they're like, hey, the First Amendment, Second Amendment, it all applies. The original intent, if you look back, and this is my Barnes, the theoretical stuff, right? And it's probably not going to happen. But if you really look back at it, all these amendments being incorporated to the states was never intended. The 14th Amendment comes about after the Civil War, and is it even legit? And then it doesn't happen until much later. All these, I think, was it McDonald or Heller? Which one incorporated the Second Amendment? Like McDonald, 2008 or so. So we're talking
McDonald was 2010.
2010.
And
so
Heller was
the
2008.
point is, it's not back at the inception of this country, right? People don't necessarily understand that. And so I'm always like, hey, if you just strip all this down and it's back to the states, it's exactly what Dobbs is kind of doing in unenumerated rights. But I don't know if you have an opinion on that or care. But I think that would be a thing of almost like some sort of divorce of our nation again, right? Stripping this away where, hey, go to Tennessee to get this. California doesn't have any guns. I'm out of here then. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, I think that would be the way to do it. But then you also have to basically eliminate the Hawaii judge issue.
Which is what?
Where a law gets passed and you immediately run to some district court, you know, you run to the whatever
Oh.
federal judge you could find who's going to be like, nope, can't do it. Like that would have. And the funny thing is, the Supreme Court has routinely said it, especially with a bunch of the Trump stuff, they were warned. Even like Sotomayor and Kagan were like, you guys got to stop doing this. Like, we don't like, they were like, we don't like this. Don't do it. And it still keeps happening. Now, since, you know, Biden took over, there's been a lot of blowback where federal judges, you know, going the other way and, you know, people are losing their minds. And I'm like, this is the, you know, this kind of goes to something I know when when Mindset was on, you guys talked about this, can you really go back to like a status quo, you know, antebellum issue? No, I don't think you can, because once you start using this stuff, you're dealing with, you know, one side who, if you give him like, it's never ending, you know, there's never enough of, you know, there's never enough, like I'll use the example of gun control. There's never enough gun control. There's never enough abortion access. There's never enough this. There's never enough that. It's always a push. It's a push. It's a push. It's a push. It's a push. You know, like I think COVID's a great example of that. They're like, you know, it's never not, oh my God, we were wrong. It's please don't get mad at us. And you know, these people, if you turn your back on them again, no, the game is on. You guys have decided how we're doing this. So yes, this is how you've laid the foundation. Harry Reid. Oh no, the dog caused the problem. Uh-oh. Honey, are you okay? I'm fine. Clyde's being an ass. Okay. Clyde's being a bad boy. You know, Harry Reid doing all that, you know, doing the nuclear option. Then after that, you know what? Fuck it. We'll do whatever we want. We'll put justices on in the middle of an election year. You know, fuck you guys. It's like, you know, once you start that, I'm very much, you know, as I've gotten older, it's like, no, there is no live and let live. At this point, it's game on. You know, like, you know, like, I'm sure Allende told Pinochet, hey, buddy, I'll stop, I promise.
So mutually,
you know what?
assured
Me
destruction
general
with lawfare.
What's that?
So
yeah,
mutually
destruction with
assured
lawfare.
destruction
Yeah.
with lawfare. Yeah, but only one side's going to employ it.
Yeah, and you know what? That means we got to fight back. You know, that's where, like, if Allende had told, you know, Pinochet, hey, buddy, I'll promise to stop, and Pinochet would be like, okay, cool. No, you don't do that. Like, Pinochet did the right thing. Like, let's keep going. Now, I know, like I said, this is a libertarian podcast for you, but I will say I have a warm spot in my heart for me generalissimo. But I think it's a good example of, you know, rust never sleeps. Right. You know, you're always fighting rust. It's always corroding. It's always eating away. And
was Pinochet dropping people out of helicopters?
Yes. Okay. Unlike Uruguay and Paraguay, where they took people in a C-130 and shoved them out over the ocean.
I mean, there's a lot of right-wing Mises type economists that went down there and I think helped him out. So yeah. I get it. Yeah.
Well, also I'd say, as far as the libertarian side, you know, you got to love your boy Hans Hermann Hoppe. You know, there's nothing wrong with physical removal, which I think is actually that is actually probably one of the most straightforward arguments of the moment the left comes into something, you failed. Like the rust is, you know, the rust is now in the frame of your car. Good luck. And you have to abate it. Yes, old iron oxide. But no, that's where I think you're left with no option other than fighting. But yes, if we could get rid of federal judges interfering in state matters, sure, I'd love to go back to that. And yeah, California, turn yourself into the biggest, you know, you want to go pretend like it's Ceausescu's Romania? Cool. You know, if Ohio wants to go the other way, cool. I think people should be allowed to do that as they wish.
I think that's the problem, though, with a lot of politics of people. There's a lot of hubris out there that they want to control other people, and so you can't do that because for whatever reason. I don't know if you know who Brian McClanahan is. He's a historian, kind of Southern boy. I just listened to a podcast yesterday or a few days ago, and he was talking about kicking out. He does a lot of Supreme Court stuff and historical stuff on, but he was talking about how this United States could kick out California, Washington, Oregon. Like there's a precedent of secession, but then I guess there was an issue with Texas. And so the way the ruling went down there is that if the country wanted to kick them out, they could do so. And he's like, hey, that's what you do. You kick out
I think
Texas now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
It's an
I think
interesting concept.
Oh, I think that's a valid legal argument. We are a union. We don't want to be in union with you. You can't leave, but we can make you leave. Like, we won't let you walk out, but we'll kick you out. Also at that point, though, it becomes an issue of, I hate to say, like, becomes Rousseau, but might makes right at that point. And if the majority isn't, the majority decided they're not wrong, so bye, California. As much as I hate Rousseau. But no, where was I going with that? Sorry, we kind of went on a sidetrack there. Shoot.
I don't know if I can.
No, I know, but I was trying. No, I know, but I thought I had something I wanted to. Damn it! And if it wasn't that important, so I guess I'll remember it later, maybe.
Derailed you quite nicely. Let me see if I had a few things I just wrote down. Just let me see if I have anything.
Sure,
good logic.
Sure.
We could do this real quick.
Yeah,
and a few things. I broke down his stream afterwards, and I found the judgment. Have you looked at the judgment, and do you think it's real? Okay. So what do you think about that whole situation? I had a lot of sympathy for him.
Well, here's what I was going to say, because people are like, oh, it had to be fake. And I'm like, if it was fake, that would have been a whole nother issue.
Yeah, you following that with the court?
What? Well, no, I'm saying that I think it's real. I can understand something getting lost in the bowels of New York City. If this is out here where I'm at in, Ohio, no. Because we're not but I can understand the behemoth of the New York City court system just sucking something up and disappearing it. Now, Joe says it's out there, and I'll take his word for it, because at the end of the day, they all recognize that the judgment is likely valid, or that even the guy admitted, I disappeared on a bender for 2 months, and I came home and all my shit was out of the apartment and I was locked out and they told me to leave. I do think that there was a valid judgment. I think there was a valid eviction. I think the way Joe explains it, apparently there was some wording when you actually read the actual judgment sheet, or saying it wasn't a contest, it was a, there was an agreement, there was a settlement of how they were going to do this. So that means that both parties would have been there, the way to have been checked. But let's say that was a typo. This guy knows he owes money. He had an apartment. He got kicked out of that apartment, and how that all worked. So no, I do think it was valid. I do think it exists. The parties acknowledged to some extent, even the plaintiffs have acknowledged, we're pretty sure something's there, but they're not going to go out of the way to verify it. It doesn't matter at that point whether or not it's true. It's whether or not it violated the FDCPA.
Yes.
So
yes. Yeah.
That's the bigger issue at that point. But I think it's 100% legitimate.
What was interesting, I found because I just want to say the guy in his pleadings. And I was all sporadic looking at stuff, so I didn't read everything. Mm-hmm. But the guy in his pleadings stated he paid $3,000 to have the judgment set aside. That was his initial, it wasn't to fight this. It was to set aside the judgment. So he kind of acknowledged it at the time. The deposition was hilarious.
I read it as the judgment of Joe's thing. Can we resolve this so you don't come after me? Oh, the way I understood it was... Oh, okay. The way I interpreted all that as that guy had paid that law firm $3,000, hey, get this guy off my back. And they took their money.
Aside, it said literally to set aside the judgment.
Okay, I misunderstood. Maybe I misunderstood it then. But either way, yes, I do. I think that's even better. Yeah, if he acknowledges it exists, well, that's,
And I'm not here defending Joe and whatever. This is what made me, and this is the next thing with you here is watching this. And I don't know Joe from Adam. He made some nice comments about my review of it, and I've had some issues with him with the Nick stuff. But that aside, it was owning a law firm, not having liability insurance, and understanding how shit could get blown back on you when you're running an office. It gives me it almost gave me heart palpitations and concern for myself, and I'm not even involved, but it was anxiety producing listening to the story as a business owner. Not only that, but a law firm, right, with my name on it, just like you name on it, and you're just this can happen. It does happen. So I don't know if you had any.
And and I assume you probably have paralegals or legal staff, right, that work for you. Yeah, so that's
yeah.
like I don't. But for you, that's even worse because you're like, I gotta trust these people not to fuck me over. You've got your name. They could sign your name on things. You probably like I'm a notary, so you guys probably have like notary stamps there too, and they could start notary like they're probably notaries themselves, and ka-chunk, what the hell are they getting involved in? What could they do? What could they cause problems with? They're that stuff terrifies me. Of like you hear these stories of renegade office workers, but also just sometimes, like in this case, the lady wasn't paying attention and sent the stuff out.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah.
But even Joe admits, like, yeah, he's like, that was a bad business practice. And, it came back to bite him.
Yeah. That's
It's,
rough. So
yeah.
I hope, oh, there we go. JC. Did we set a goal for tonight? It's $1.99. That's the goal.
You'll know the goal when you meet it. We'll tell you. Keep going.
Is there any cases you're interested in right now that you're interested in coming up? I know there's Garth Brooks, there's Nick's thing that might happen.
Garth Brooks, I think Garth Brooks is gonna fizzle out. I do think the stuff with Vince McMahon is gonna be very interesting because he pushed that into mediation. But it looks like I don't know if that's gonna take. I hope it does because that'll be very interesting in that regard. I don't know. Did you follow any of that where he's apparently, so this lady, this lady claims like he was sexually assaulting her and abusing her, and somehow this all happened, and she walked her way into like the C-suite of the WWE, and in the meantime, Vince is like shitting in her hair and like doing some like really freaky deaky stuff for like a 75-year-old guy, which rather impressive given that he's 75 years old. So he paid her off and with the NDA, and he promised to pay her like a couple mil, and he basically stiffed her. But she tried to go out with this in a lawsuit, and he's like, no. There's a binding arbitration clause in your NDA, and now she's probably gonna have to do that. But we'll see if that happens. That's one of the big ones there. Like I know Sarah Boone, like that's going to be unfolding, but the real case I want to know about is Richard Allen. He's a guy up in Indiana. He's accused of murdering these two girls, and it's a cold case murder. And it's an absolute travesty of justice. I don't know if you've ever watched. I've mentioned it a little bit here and there. Andrea Burkhart's there covering it in person. Okay. This guy he's getting fucking railroaded. Like it's absolutely bonkers. Like this judge is so unfucking hinged. She kicked the two appointed attorneys off the case, and other attorneys in Indiana had to rally and help this guy file a writ of mandamus in the Indiana Supreme Court saying like, you can't do this. And it turns out she didn't like him because she kicked him off because she didn't like him, basically. And they didn't do it, like, she wasn't happy with how they were doing stuff. And the Indiana Supreme Court heard their oral arguments on it, and we watched them. And, like, within an hour of the oral arguments was like, here's the order. They're back on the case. We'll do a written opinion later. Wow. Like, that's how bad this judge has fucked with the case. The police in it, they've lost, like, so these two girls are, like, 13 and 14 years old. They're dead. One of the girls had like a boyfriend. And their dad was initially interviewed as a suspect. And part of it is there's like this weird like tie-in with like these girls were found. There was like some runes that were made like with sticks, and one of them was like carved in a tree. And there's like this group of like fucking losers in central Indiana who are like, I'm a pagan. And they look like complete faggots. But they're like, I'm a Norse pagan. I believe in Odin. And it's like, do you really? Like, why are you like, bro, you don't look like a pagan to me. You drive a fucking Kia, But a couple of them also look like meth heads. What's that?
Pagans don't drive Kias.
Well, no, I'm just saying, like, you'd be like driving a Harley that's, a Harley straight piped out or something like that. Or, you'd be like, what's up, brother? But these guys, they just look like complete tools and fucking idiots. And they went and interviewed, a professor at Purdue, and the professor's like, yeah, these are like what an idiot would think like Norse runes are meant to be. So that was basically his answer. And these guys are idiots. These guys have had issues like their alibis are bad. Some of them are extremely violent. A couple of them have kidnapped people. Like, it's all fucked. And the judge is like, nope, I'm not letting you introduce third-party defenses. She was part of Indiana's we need more, they gave recommendations to the Supreme Court of Indiana. We need more cameras in the courtroom. Well, not this case. No cameras, no pictures, no recordings, nothing. She has, these guys, Richard Allen's team, wrote 4 separate Franks motions, like legitimate Franks motions, probably like 500-600 pages total of motion practice. And for like 3 of them, she would just do a journal entry, denied. And that's all she'd say. These are without merit, they're denied. And then finally, like the last one, she articulated in the journal entry like 5 or 6 sentences. And like that's how she's been running things. This guy, Richard Allen, when he was initially arrested, the county sheriff where it happened was like, I can't protect him. We don't know why, from what, we don't know. So they shipped him to the Indiana Department of Corrections. And he spent almost a year in maximum security in a SHU, in a secure housing unit, in complete solitary. And he mentally broke down to the point where like he was eating his own shit. Yikes. And in that middle of all that, he confessed. Now, what did he confess to? He confessed to killing the girls. He confessed to killing his wife while he's talking to his wife. He confessed to killing his daughter, his parents. Obviously, none of those things ever happened. He was like, it's just, there's so many what the fucks to this case. And this guy's going to get fucking railroaded. And I think the only thing that's going to save him is he's got 2 absolute fucking pit bulls of attorneys that he was so fortunate to get. Barnes that are like, this guy's innocent. Yeah. Although the funny part is, when the judge initially kicked the 2 attorneys off, she put 2 new attorneys on. Those attorneys ended up getting kicked back off. They gave interviews to Court TV. Were like, oh, he's 100% fucking innocent. Like, multiple attorneys have said this guy's innocent. Like, he's 100% did do this. And it's going right now, and it's going to be like a month-long trial. And it's just absolutely... Oh, another person covering it is Bob Mata. The Defense Diaries podcast. I don't know if you've ever listened to that. So
there's no camera to just
nothing.
Andre,
nothing. No electronic devices allowed in the courthouse. So like Andrew Burkhart's just sitting there scribbling out notes.
It's crazy. It's like a federal case or something like that.
Oh, it's even worse than a federal case. Yeah, sorry. That's like probably the biggest one I'm looking at right now. Sorry, that's a lot to take on.
Post 86 ATF taxed machine guns post Bruin at least.
I mean, to be fair, Torgo, technically it's not illegal because there was a case where a bunch of guys had, they didn't trick the ATF, but they said, hey, ATF, can we make these full auto AR-15 lowers if we put it in a trust? And the ATF accidentally said yes. Well, very quickly, the ATF realized, oh my God, we just did this. And they said, no, give them back. And they sued. And one of the attorneys involved in this, I will say his name's Steven Stamboulier, did a lot of discovery work and a lot of FOIA stuff. The ATF they have given out thousands of post 1986 machine gun stamps to people. And it's not now. There are in the God. I'm going to say a bunch of things a lot of people might not know. There's a bunch of lore around 1986. So a lot of companies like example. Do you know what a Sten machine gun is? It's one of the World War II guns. So, like, by the end of World War II, a lot of guns were just stamped sheet metal tubes. And you can basically, you could go to Home Depot and build this. That's how primitive they are. Minimal parts, and they work. So companies would make a bunch of machine gun bodies, the receivers, and they would just register them all at once. And then it'd take them a couple years to make them and sell them. But by that point, they're registered. There was a company out there called Stemple, and they had done a lot of hinky shit. So there's like a bunch of like sets of machine guns that have been, they exist and they're post 1986. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people applying to the ATF on a Form 1 or a Form 4 to privately buy or build a brand new machine gun, and the ATF saying done. And it appears a lot of that was done as political favors, or just if you were in the in crowd, like supposedly one of Ted Kennedy's bodyguards got a brand new machine gun approved because the ATF's like, okay, cool, yeah, we'll do it, just don't tell anybody. Like thousands and thousands of them have happened. So there, and there's stamps with like a 1995 date on them, which is like well after it. Like it wasn't an accident. Like 1987, like you can argue maybe an accident, but like 1995, 1996, like there's no way. Like one of them was like 2001 was a stamp. So I would love to see it, and I think technically that could happen, but I think we're kind of stuck with what we get. There's a better chance of suppressors being delisted, short barrel rifles being taken off. Short barrel shotguns are probably never going to go away because people are going to be like, oh my God, sawed-off shotguns are bad guy guns. But I think, suppressors would probably have the best chance. And then destructive devices, people think that shit's crazy, like the RPG, I'm never going to be able to just own that without registering it, like none of that stuff. So sorry to make you guys sad.
No, this is you did really good on the gun stuff, so I appreciate that. I think glad you showed up tonight. Is there any questions for me before we head out?
No, I guess just for you, like when I remember running into this, because I know like when Joe's like, thank you, Tyler, I know Tyler, and I found out about you, I was like, is it at first I was like, is this a libertarian reviewing, like it's a podcast review and he's a libertarian, or is this a review of libertarian podcast? And I I thought it was going to be kind of like, you're like, oh yeah, these guys aren't good libertarians. Like they don't know their Rothbard. They don't know whatever. But I do
started. Go ahead. Yeah. I was going to answer that question. It was that's what I started to do. I would have podcasts and I'd play clips, review them, because then you can have those people as guests on your show. And that's what it started to be. And then I'm just kind of like, I'm libertarian, but I also just got a little tired of it, and I like the legal stuff, and I just wanted to branch away. So now I just say LPR. I don't know. That's right.
Yeah. No, and I was actually going to ask you, when it comes to like libertarianism, I've kind of said this. I think it's to the point now where if like Milton Friedman tried just popped onto the scene, like I think the libertarians would call him a Nazi today. Like the mainline libertarians who are very, like, I think a lot of libertarians have, like, the hardcore libertarians think they can really just go live in the woods, or that the ANCAP thing, which, I don't want fucking Wayland Yutani or the Tyrell Corporation. Like, that's ANCAP. And I don't think they understand that.
So I am more on that vein, but I live in the real world too. So and all of that really means is when you start walking your way through limited government, at some point, Mao was a limited government person. His limits were just much different than, Mises or any of these others. Fair. So at what point is, this limit to be gone away with? And so then there's, Rothbard and all this theory that you can talk about privatizing everything, which I think and people have a hard time with that. And I don't need to get into any, discussion, because there's a lot of give and take on all that. But, when you start to, even as we said with the Second Amendment being incorporated in 2010, okay, once this happens, you think that you just have to always do it this way. Well, it's recent. Why is the government involved in, one industry but not another? They're not making shoes for everybody. Anyway, so, there's that whole prospect and everything. But the problem with libertarians is when they get this mindset and they start to realize this, and I think they love this philosophy where they start, and especially me, when I started to understand the ANCAP idea, which is you're a capitalist, right? But you believe in no rulers. It doesn't mean you don't have hierarchies still. When you start to see that, you're like, oh, this is really intoxicating. And then you want to, basically push everybody out that doesn't believe in everything you do. So that's a problem out there. Right. And it does definitely happen. I think, I'm sorry, Milton Friedman is great. You go watch his stuff on, Donahue's show. It was amazing, and there's great thought people out there, him, Rothbard, all these ones. But in the main thing is they're all this direction that I love, and so then we can fight about it. But the reality is there's so much further left that's in the way.
Well, that's what I was going to
So
ask you too.
Yeah.
It's gone really left, and that's I think the bigger issue there. And I think a great example of that is the Boogaloo Boys. Because I remember when that stuff all kicked off, and you're like, oh, well, these guys seem pretty based. And very quickly they turned into anarcho-communists. And I'm like,
yes,
what the fuck just happened here? I'm like, this is pretty based. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, this is Barcelona in 1937. We went from like really cool to all of a sudden I'm like, what? How did we end up here? And it happened like, and I guess I didn't realize at the time, it's like they were always like that, but it's like, how, with the libertarians too, though, I think a lot of the mainstream libertarian thought is governed by this more left libertarianism, which I really don't think is really libertarianism at the end of the day. But yes, it's been kind of, I would say, corrupted because it's not even a centrist view on things, which would probably be a little more okay and a little more you could like understand and work with. But yeah, it's gone completely like more and more and more left, I think, over the past 10 years.
Well, you've got this and by the way, think of libertarians, right? You're not easily corralled because you're all such individuals.
Yes.
So now you want to have a political party, and then you have this where it's a lot of individuals. Mm-hmm. And the problem you have with libertarians too is you have these left ones and you have these right ones that all kind of come together with some semblance of agreement, but there's the fringes that are just wildly different. So it's a more extreme almost in all aspects, and then you have a lot of fighting with that. I mean, I'm more of the right wing Hoppe, Hans Hermann Hoppe.
Yes,
idea,
I love Hans.
Yeah. That's where I'm more at. But and someone just said, "Hey, what's your opinion of Dave Smith?" I like Dave Smith. I've been on the show. I've met him in person. Mm-hmm. Good guy. There's good aspects and there's bad aspects of all of this. And the biggest issue that I kind of have with these is I start to have different views, world views, in a sense that things have changed. War, as an example. I'm not a big fan of war, so some of these conflicts are happening. But then I don't agree at all with some of these wackos that are out there protesting, right? So how do you? And this is the problem I have. How do you believe in something where you may share a common goal with someone, but you do not want to be affiliated with them? So sometimes you just back away and just cover Supreme Court cases. Oh yeah, no, that's You're like, I like it, but yes, the people that run with it are completely ruining the identity or they're ruining the brand. Yeah. And no, I agree with you. Yeah. I mean, it's funny, where I've been now, and it's to the point where, like in, like 2003 when I was in high school, and you're going to Iraq. I'm like, all right, cool. Yeah. Fuck it up. Like, fuck them up. Now you look back, you're like, wow, you can really run like everything back 20 years to that point. Or, now when they're, what's that? I was just saying, I agree. So. Yeah. And then, like people are like on Twitter, like Dick Cheney supports Kamala. I'm like, if you haven't for 1 second thought to, it's like that stone toss meme where everybody's pulling on the one side of the rope and the guy's like, wait, what? Who's on my side? Like if Dick Cheney is backing your play and you haven't stopped to go, what does he want? And why does he want what I want? And you're not like, he just wants America to. It's like, no, he doesn't. This is the same guy you were calling Hitler and like Emperor Palpatine before, and you just see these things, and I'm just like, yeah, fuck the Cheneys, fuck all these people, and like my little message down there, like I'm like. Oh, we need to save Ukraine. I'm like, no, we don't. Like, I don't want to go. I don't think we need to go scrap all the Navy ships and turn them into razor blades for free. Or, I'll own a Tomahawk missile. That'll be good enough for, defending the nation. No, I think we need that stuff. But like, are we going to go just all piss it away in Ukraine? I'm like, no, sorry. You're outside, it's kind of like with fire insurance. Sorry, you don't have a plaque on your house. Sorry. I mean, it's kind of where I'm at with it at this point. Idea. Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. Like NATO, I would argue, because the international level is anarchy. Sorry, you're not in the club. Like, right. Good luck. But I'm not giving,
well, but I mean, you see that. Well, I don't think you see it now, but I remember like it was like 10 years ago. Some people like in Tennessee, their house caught fire, but they never paid the subscription fee for the fire department.
Yeah.
Which, guys, at some places that really is still a thing. Their house burned down, and the fire department came by, like everybody out. Yeah, okay, cool. And they responded to make sure there was nobody in the house because they would have saved them. But other than that, people's house burned down. It's like, yeah, if you don't have fire taxes taken out, yeah, you got to pay the subscription fee. But yeah, that's where it's like, I don't. Is NATO? Do I think NATO probably has benefits? And okay, we can argue about NATO membership a different time. But it's like, if you're not in the club, if you're not covered under insurance, you don't go insure people who are not covered under the company policies. Like that's just, yeah, it's very much a kind of where things are.
Bring up, and we don't have to get into all this, but that's the free rider problem. And I know everyone's talking about this, so that's a problem. But these are fun things to think of. And what I think it's interesting is we should just be trying these kind of things a little bit more, right? Let people work things out rather than always run into mommy, daddy, government, because that's when we start to have the problems. And that's obviously what we see. With the
I think if you were to if you were to cut the federal government by 5%, like I'm not like I'd love to say like 50% of the government gone tomorrow, but let's say you took it down 5%. Just across the board, like 5% reduction in overall government. Oh my God, it would feel like people would feel like a ton of concrete got pulled off of them. Like, oh my God, there'd be so many unemployed government bureaucrats, womp womp. But, they can always learn the code. But that just like minor adjustments, I would love to see those happen and tweak it and get it going. That would be enough. That would be very impressive.
Well, I think it starts locally. So, people, if you're interested in getting involved, get involved locally, can change some things there. And then, God bless us and keep us safe for the election. Who knows what's going to happen here? Where can everyone find you? I really appreciate you coming on the show tonight.
Yeah, sure.
We'll have to do it again, of course. Thanks for answering all these tough questions.
Yeah, well, tough ones, sure. No, you guys can find me Potentially Criminal here on YouTube. On Twitter, it's LawTube Sean. I know you're like, well, isn't there a Potentially Criminal thing too? Yes, but that got nuked, and I was in the gulag for it, and then it become ungulag. So people I have to check every once in a while. People are trying to message me, and I feel bad because I don't use that all the time anymore. So I have to find things and people from there. But no, it's LawTube Sean. That's the one there. You'll see me trolling all the NAFO and Ukraine people. That's how you'll know it's me. You can find me there. That it will be tonight. Probably doing a little bit work on one of the models, and kind of just hanging out. We'll probably do Sarah Boone's opening arguments tomorrow because I do think those are interesting.
Yeah, so go check out Sean's show. Follow him over there tonight. What I started to do with my podcast review is really trying to showcase people that I thought were great, and you're obviously one of them. So this Nick thing has bothered me. It's somewhat because I've gone down more of a negative path. And, ripping on people, you get negative blowback as well, but it's really, I like to promote. So, it's one of the aspects I like about you, and you have a positive show, and it's been a lot of fun. So,
and I mean, well, there's going to be negative stuff. And Tyler, I think you've been doing great work too. I mean, but it's not always going to be sunshine and rainbow. Like sometimes it's going to be negative shit. And to argue this isn't worth covering, what do you want me to say? You want me to tell you he's got it in the bag, chat. General Steiner is going to liberate, the Rakata compound. Venk and his Ninth Army are coming to save today. No, it's it. It's game over. Like I said, I'm not gonna bullshit you on that. It doesn't help me. I don't like being wrong, so I won't tell you a lie. Because being wrong pisses me off more than anything. Especially when people then point out that I was wrong. That really irks my shit. So, and I take failure very personally.
Well, don't you didn't fail tonight. Not yet. So
I don't. Yeah.
So everybody follow me, click the little subscribe, whatever.
Yes.
I get my numbers up as well. If you guys have questions about Criminal stuff, go to Sean. If you have questions about family law stuff, keep coming back over here, and we'll keep doing good shows. I'm going to try something new tonight, which is I'm doing my outro, and they have a new thing with StreamYard. I don't use StreamYard a bunch here, Sean, but it's when you just click the end, it's supposed to play the extra outro automatically. We'll see if it happens. So it's going to happen here in a second. If it doesn't, and it just ends the stream, everybody, we hope to see you next week, every Friday night. So any last words before I hit end stream?
No, guys, just don't doom. Like, the election's coming up. Be ready.
There you go. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Things are going to start happening to me now.
I think Tyler is amazing.
And I'm a fan of this show. I've watched several episodes.
Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Tyler. You stink, Tyler.
Never promise crazy a baby.
Oh, I like that. That's a cool idea.
Are either of you homosexuals?
I go both ways. What do you think?
You mean like flaming or?
No, we're not homosexual, but we are willing to learn.
But I do wonder, for others, in other cases, whether libertarianism today is just an excuse for many on the right to act selfishly.
Look at me. And then some fat asses in Washington started having opinions. The Olympic Committee started having opinions. You bitch, I know you. You started writing your opinions.
And it just makes me wonder, you're dead, bitch. You know, why are you doing this to this poor guy?
I don't care. I'm a libertarian. What I'm getting is,
Did you vote for Joe Jorgensen or Trump?
Who?
Joe Jorgensen. That was the perfect answer. Thank you.